Greetings, anatomy and physiology students. Today I'm going to go over the skin models that we have, and we're going to start by looking at this model, and we're going to focus in on the epidermis. The epidermis, if you can see this dark orange line at the bottom, starts with the stratum basale, then continues upward with the stratum spinosum, then we have the stratum granulosum. The stratum lucidum is only found in thick skin in the soles of the feet and the palms of the hand. And then finally we have the stratum corneum. So that is the epidermis. If we move back out, you can see the dermal papillae. Remember, a papilla is a nipple-like structure. So when we back out and look at the dermis as a whole, we know that we have the papillary layer of the dermis, okay, which includes the dermal papillae and an area just below that. And then below the papillary layer of the dermis, we have the reticular layer of the dermis, understanding that the word reticular means pertaining to the network. On this particular model, we have hair follicles in the dermis. Remember that the epidermis dips down into the dermis to form sebaceous glands and hair follicles. Associated with each hair follicle is the sebaceous gland, which produces sebum, an oily structure. And here is the erector pili muscle. Remember that the erector pili muscle is smooth muscle that is going to be excited to contract by means of the autonomic nervous system because it is involuntary. It's not voluntary skeletal muscle. At the bottom of the hair follicle, we have the hair papilla, which again is a nipple-like structure that goes down at the very base of the bulb of the hair follicle. All of the hair underneath the skin is referred to as the root. The part of the hair above the surface of the epidermis is referred to as the shaft of the hair. When we look at this particular model, you can see right in here in the dermal papillae are Meissner's corpuscles. It's capital M-E-I-S-S-N-E-R apostrophe S. Meissner's corpuscles help us detect light touch. Here we have some Apocrine sweat glands. Remember, Apocrine sweat glands produce sweat, which is a mixture of water, salt, and urea. Down here, deeper in the reticular layer of the dermis, we have a Pacinian or lamellar corpuscle. Remember, lamella means layer. So this has a lot of layers. That is for deep pressure and vibration. You can see that we have some adipose tissue in the dermis, but adipose tissue exists in a greater amount in the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. On this particular model, we also have an apocrine gland, an apocrine sweat gland, which will produce not only sweat, but it includes a mixture of proteins, which when broken down on the skin by bacteria is what causes odor. Apocrine sweat glands are found around the genitalia, under the armpits, or in the armpits, and also they're found around nipples. And moving along to this next model, again, here we are going to zoom in on the epidermis, starting with the stratum basale in blue, the stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum in yellow, stratum corneum is this uppermost layer. Now, normally you don't have hair where your skin has 5 layers of epidermis. This happens to be a free nerve ending. We did not see that in the other model, but free nerve endings do go into the epidermis. Remember, the epidermis is made up of epithelial tissue and it is completely avascular, but it does have these free nerve endings. So if you were to get a shallow paper cut that only went into the epidermis, you could feel it, but you won't necessarily bleed. On this model, these are the Meissner's corpuscles. We also have our hair follicle with its associated erector pili muscle, our sebaceous gland, our Pacinian or lamellar corpuscle for deep pressure and vibration. Here we have an Apocrine sweat gland, it's E-C-C-R-I-N-E. And here you can see the hair papilla at the base of the hair follicle. And here we have the hypodermis. Again, if we were to look at the difference of the dermis, the papillary layer would be right here where the papillae are and just underneath it, but further down is where our reticular layer would be. So if we put a little marker here and ask you to name the layer of the dermis, you would want to tell us that is the reticular layer of the dermis. Now, moving right along, this next model was pretty much the same as we saw in the last one. We've got our 5 layers of the epidermis. We see our free nerve endings, our Meissner's corpuscles, our eccrine sweat gland, the hair follicle, its associated sebaceous gland, and the erector pili muscle, as well as the Pacinian corpuscle. These little guys are a little bit different. We still have the epidermis, but you can't really differentiate the layers as easily, although this white layer would indicate the clear stratum lucidum. Here we have our eccrine sweat glands, our Meissner's corpuscles are here as well, our hair follicle with its associated erector pili muscle, the sebaceous glands, which produce that oily sebum, and again, you've got your reticular layer of the dermis, the papillary layer of the dermis is up here, and then your hypodermis is down here. Here we have our Pacinian or lamellar corpuscles, which they put deeper on this model. And that's fine. Pacinian or lamellar corpuscles can be found deep in the dermis or within the hypodermis. This is pretty much the same model as the last. The coloring was just a little different on the Meissner's corpuscles. They're still the same thing, as well as the Pacinian corpuscle. So those are the models of the skin. Learn them and enjoy. I'll see you in class.